history of diplomacy. Sir, for
Okay.
today's presentation of mine, and I'll be tackling about the what
Diplomacy.
on about the diplomacy
Okay.
being the traditional tool in changing times. As mentioned earlier on, we mentioned that diplomacy is quite crucial in settling disputes and misunderstandings among nations for quite some time, and
Mm.
that's why it's being called to be something like uh, a traditional tool in changing times, because we are now in a fast changing world, and
Mm-hmm.
even then diplomacy is very very much necessary in settling all the differences. Now let me just cite a little about the brief history of diplomacy. Diplomacy has a long multifaceted history dating back to ancient times, and here's the brief overview of its evolution. We have the ancient civilizations wherein diplomacy can be traced back to civilizations like
Mm.
ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China, where envoys were sent to negotiate treaties and establish diplomatic relations. And in fact, when
Mm.
I go into the even during the biblical times, no, in my study of the Bible, I can see also that there were this kind of type of diplomacies that were done in the
Mm.
past. We also have the Greek city-states, and the diplomacy gained prominence in the Greek city-states in the 5th and 4th centuries BCE, where Athens and Sparta engaged in diplomatic exchanges, treaties, and alliances. So we also have during the Roman Empire, the Middle Ages, and of course the rise of nation states. Now, with the emergence of modern nation states in the 16th century, diplomacy became formalized and professionalized. It was primarily conducted by monarchs and their representatives to secure
Mm.
territories, negotiate treaties, and maintain alliances. The Treaty of Westphalia is considered to be a landmark event in the history of diplomacy. Why? Because it introduced the concept of state sovereignty and the idea of diplomatic immunity for diplomats. So this is where the concerned nation states were, they have the common understanding that the diplomats that they send to represent their country's interest must be given immunity from suits, from any other harm. So being the extension of their government. And in the modern diplomacy, this now encompasses various forms. No? We have the bilateral, the multilateral diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, economic diplomacy, and so on and so forth. No? So, and in this type of diplomatic relations, the non-government players were also, they became also an active participant, in promoting peace and cooperation among nations. So throughout history, the role of diplomacy has evolved in response to changing international dynamics, technological advancements, and the increasing interdependence among nations. Nevertheless, diplomacy remains a vital tool for promoting peace, resolving conflicts, and advancing global competition. So whether we like it or not, conflict is there. It's endemic. It's part of the system, because every state has its own interest to protect on and support. Now, what are the functions of diplomacy? Diplomacy serves several important functions in international relations, and here are some of the key functions. Number one, communication and representation. Diplomacy facilitates communication between nations, acting as the primary channel for conveying messages, expressing concerns, and conveying positions. Diplomats represent their country's interests and offer a forum for dialogue and negotiation. But unfortunately, in our case right now between China and Philippines regarding the West Philippine Sea, there
Mm.
seems to be a little problem arising, because the the government of China keeps on pushing its agenda in the country, and in the West Philippine Sea, and the diplomats have little impact. No? They don't really serve as much impact in containing the situation, because the the Chinese government is very keen about protecting and promoting its interest in the West Philippine Sea. Negotiation and conflict resolution. So this is where in the Philippines the setting is very very much important. Diplomacy plays a crucial role in negotiating agreements and resolving conflicts. Diplomats engage in diplomatic negotiations to find common ground, mediate disputes, and reach peaceful solutions. They use diplomacy to prevent conflicts from escalating into wars and to maintain stability in the international system. In our situation in the Philippines, we are not so keen about escalating the conflict into war because the reality is that we cannot compete with China. That happens to be one of the superpower when it comes to military might. The next one is promotion of interests. Diplomacy serves to advance a nation's interests in the international arena. Diplomats work to protect and promote their country's political, economic, and cultural interests, forging alliances, negotiating trade agreements, and seeking opportunities for cooperation. In the recent travel of President Marcos to Japan, we can see here that there is so much, there's so much discussion about Japanese government investing billions of their funds, to help stimulate the economic growth of our country, of the economic interest of our country. So that's because of the groundwork done by the diplomats. Information gathering and analysis. Diplomacy involves gathering of information, analysis of developments happening in other countries. And in the last part of this presentation, we can see also we will have a discussion about espionage. So why is espionage necessary? Why? Because it gives the government concern an idea on what are the plans, no, what are the activities of the other nation states relative to their own interests. No? So it may not be very much welcome thing to do, but that is a necessary thing, no? For a state to have an idea on what the other governments are doing in relation to their interests. No? So that is very much necessary in gathering information, coming up with analysis, no, to preempt whatever the other nation might do. The next one is the representation of international organizations. So this is very much shown during the activities that are being done at the United Nations, the World Trade Organizations, and other regional bodies like the ASEAN and so on and so forth. The next one is, I think, one of the most important thing is the crisis management. During times of crisis or emergencies, diplomacy plays a critical role in managing and resolving the situation. Diplomats engage in crisis diplomacy, facilitating communication between parties, mediating disputes, and seeking diplomatic solutions. So this is now happening between Israel and Palestinian organization, wherein other countries are also involved. This is the focal point right now in the Middle East. So crisis management is very much crucial because government must have to be careful in handling the situation so that relations, negotiation and bargaining are fundamental processes in international relations, as we have mentioned earlier on. And this is this is the very tool that helps resolve conflicts among nations. Now, the next topic that I will be presenting on is the legal setting of diplomacy in international relations. So it is very much necessary that rules must be set. No? Rules must be set. So like the United Nations, it observes the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And well, actually, we have here some kind of a legal fundamental framework for international relationships. The Vienna Convention of Diplomatic Relations, which was promulgated in 1961, and the Vienna Convention of Consular Relations, which was promulgated in 1963, and we have the bilateral and multilateral agreements like the Philippines. So these are the basic foundation for international relations. But unfortunately, like going back into the focal point here at the West Philippine Sea, the UNCLOS, no, the United Nations agreement on about sea territorial disputes and something like that, is not keenly observed also by China, because China came out with its own rules and try to push its agenda against other nations, no, without coming up with mutually agreed coming up with a mutually agreed solution. So that's why in this case, China appears to be bullying small nations like the countries like the Philippines. Now, what are the various diplomatic styles? So there are so many styles or diplomatic styles, but I would just like to point a little some key points here. Number one is the bilateral diplomacy, as I had mentioned earlier on, between the Philippines and the U.S. It's a peace treaty, peace defense treaty, and of course, U.S. has an upper ground here because it's protecting its own interests overseas. No? So we are not in the equal footing, but just the same, we depend on this kind of an agreement to protect ourselves as well, no? Like from countries like China, in this case. We have also the economic diplomacy. Economic diplomacy focuses on using economic tools and incentives to achieve diplomatic goals. So political objectives and political diplomacy goes hand in hand with economic diplomacy. So parang this is some kind of a carrot and stick thing that they do, no? Like the US. If you do not follow us, if you do not obey, or you do not toe the line in regards to what we want you to do, then we will remove from you we will minimize the military aid that we are supposed to give to you. No? So this is especially true during the time when we have the US bases settled here in the Philippines, no, during the time in Subic. So they use it as a tool. They use it as a tool. No, so things like those. And coercive diplomacy involves the use of threat or limited force to persuade an adversary to change his behavior. So we have so many examples in other countries where the U.S. uses its force, no, to impose its agenda. No, one classic example is in Iran, no, in Iran, and that's what they're doing right now. No, coercive diplomacy. And I think there was an agreement some time ago that they would infuse billions of dollars. No, they would give it to Iran, but if they're willing to the line. But unfortunately, it's a very was not very clear, no, kung ano ang iyang situation give, but uh, Iran is playing its game so well. That's why US is very careful enough. We're so afraid that if things goes off hand, then it would totally escalate to a global crisis affecting that. In fact, as others were saying that this would be an advent to the Third World War. Okay, so who are the non-state actors of diplomacy? As we have mentioned, every player is very important, and here we also have non-state actors. And who are they? We have international organizations, as we have mentioned, United Nations, the European Union, and the World Bank, the International Monetary Bank, and so on and so forth. So these are the international organizations, and we also have non-government organizations. And non-government organizations these are entities that are not controlled by the government, but they are so powerful enough that they affect the state and affairs of any government, no, because of their resources and their reach. We also have the multinational corporations in the Philippines, like here in General Santos City. We have the Dolls Philippines, and Dolls Philippines is so much influential, no, in of course in promoting its own interests, not only in the country but globally. No? The idea of the multinational corporations. Actually, they pursue their own economic interest and goals. We also have the transnational criminal organizations. One example for that is the Interpol. Interpol is not really part of the any government, but they are a tool to help pursue fugitives from other countries, to bring them to justice. And also the media and information networks. Classic example for that is the CNN, and CNN is quite powerful. CNN goes all over the world, and it can stand on its own when it comes to information dissemination and things like those. Okay, and we also have the international criminal tribunals, of course, like the International Criminal Court. And it's in the country right now. It's quite an issue because they would like to interfere in the political judiciary system in the country. Okay, so what does multilateral diplomacy mean? The key characteristics of multilateral diplomacy include, well, of course, when you talk about multilateral, that means it involves many other countries, and its key characteristics are the following: inclusivity. Multilateral diplomacy involves the participation of multiple actors, which can include nation states, international organizations, and sometimes non-state actors such as the non-government organizations and multinational corporations. Complexities, multinational negotiations can be complex due to diverse array of participants and the need to reconcile different national interests, policy priorities, and cultural perspectives. No? So there's a play of interest actually. No? So uh, the key factor here is that at the end of the day, the one who has the carrot no has the say. No, the one who's more powerful, who has the more bargaining chip has the say. And unfortunately, third world countries, the Philippines, we just in the small area and we just tend to just follow whatever they say. And we also have consensus building, implementation and compliance. Well, implementation and compliance in multilateral diplomacy also involves efforts to ensure the implementation and compliance of international agreements, treaties, and resolutions reached through multilateral negotiations. So this can involve monitoring mechanisms, enforcement measures, and ongoing dialogue among the participating countries. Okay. So yeah, like what I have mentioned, well, of course, the last thing that I would like to discuss a little is about the role and impact of diplomacy in international society. I have some key points here. Number one is the conflict prevention and resolution. Diplomacy plays a crucial role in preventing and resolving conflicts between nations. And, number two is promotion of international law and norms. Diplomacy is instrumental in upholding and promoting international law, human rights, and global norms. So, uh, this is something like everyone has to agree whether we did like it or not, no, to help promote international peace. Facilitation of trade and economic relations. So, yeah, this is true, especially when it comes to the international trade agreements, things like those. No, to well, of course, the agenda generally the agenda is to help make the economic reforms accessible to all, and especially countries in Africa, no, they tend to be what's this? They tend to be manipulated on by other powerful countries like France, things like this for the resources. But in at the end of the bargaining table, the countries in Africa were not given so much opportunity for them to grow economically. So, but then the idea is to help promote that kind of a relationship that is equal to all, but the reality does not say so. Okay, and one critical thing here is the environmental protection and sustainable development. It's a global concern actually. No? We are so aware about that things the global climate change, because it's virtually affecting the whole world. Okay, so diplomacy plays a key role in addressing global environmental challenges, promoting sustainable development. Diplomatic negotiations lead to international agreements aimed at mitigating climate change, protecting biodiversity, and managing natural resources. My take only on this is that just the same, China, the power countries like China, the US, and even Europe, sometimes they tend to what's this? Play around. No, they are not quite very keen about cutting down the emission levels. No, because scientists are saying that this is the reason why there is the global climate changes that's going on and virtually affecting the whole world. So, but just the same, this also tend as a way for the international community to come out with a common understanding on how to address the situation. Okay, and the last would be about the espionage. As I have mentioned earlier on, espionage is very, very much alive and kicking, whether you like it or not. Every country, like the Philippines, we have our own espionage agency that tries to gather and collect information about what other countries are doing. But unfortunately, we are not that strong enough. We are not that very, sophisticated enough. And we don't have that technology to be able to unlike the US, they could, eavesdrop every communication that's done everywhere else through their satellites in outer space. And I think Russia and China is doing that, doing the same.
Until now.
Yeah, until now they're doing it. So we are, whether we like it or not, the Philippines is a small game player. we're just a small participant here. That's why sometimes it's very very important that our national security apparatus would be very keen about like what China is doing. You know, well, some are saying that the Chinese using TikTok and other platforms to penetrate and gather information about what we're doing, the vulnerabilities of the Filipino as a nation, the government, things like those. But whether you like it or not, our government has the, as even a small player has to do something to gather information about what other countries are doing. But we cannot bargain enough. We cannot have our own big chip because we don't have much resources. We don't have much technology to do that. So I think that sums up the what diplomacy, how diplomacy plays in the international level, and as we can see here, well, the interests are intertwined, and powerful countries tend to gain more, no, to have what they want, they could pursue their own agenda at the mercy of smaller countries like the Philippines. But just the same, well, the Philippines can do so much once it is united, and the government comes up with the common position and common, we must have a united voice. At whatever front in the international level, the country must have a united voice. The
Mm.
countries, like President Marcos, must be able to galvanize unity among our political, economic, and military leaders to be able to have a stronger front, no, to in protecting our interests as well. I think that will be also, unless you have any other
Okay.
questions to ask.
Mm.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks for that presentation. Of course, diplomacy is really is important in every country for that country to improve in general. Let's say.
Yes, sir.
Even in of course much more in economic aspect, no, diplomacy. Now
Yes, sir.
the recent recent bullying of the continuous
Yes.
bullying of Chinese coast guards to Filipino uh, boatmen and even our officials. Now
Yes, sir.
there is a Chinese ambassador in the Philippines, no? So that's why what is this ambassador doing here when he knows that their militia is still doing with that bullying acts, no? And even
Yes, sir.
our ambassador to China, what did he do? Supposed
Mm,
to be
mm,
that's their work, no? Because ambassadors are the is the highest form of diplomats, no? Silang highest
yes, sir.
rank na diplomats. There are
Yes,
many
sir.
diplomats as you have mentioned, no? Marami talagang from diplomats, if the state and non-state actors, they are diplomats. But of course,
Yes,
the
sir.
ambassadors are the highest form of uh, the highest rank diplomats. But
Yes. Mm, mm,
what have they done, no?
mm,
For
mm.
that continuous, parang it's an act of parang Bang Jose
Harassment.
Rizal garit niya ang ano Bang Jose Rizal
Ginagalit, yes, sir.
garit niya ang mga Filipinos. And
That's right.
by the way, what is your opinion about that? Is it a way of starting a war between China and Philippines?
Uh,
What these Chinese people are doing?
actually, as I have presented earlier on, the Chinese government has the upper hand because they are military might, they are economic might, and the
Mm,
Philippines is just a small pawn in the
mm,
playing field. So we cannot really force ourselves in, except that we can only invoke the US
yes,
Philippine Mutual Defense Treaty Act.
mm,
And well, the good sign here is that recently, because unlike in the previous years, US is very much silent when it comes to these things, no? When it comes to
mm,
this
mm,
act of aggression coming from China. But recently, US, even President Biden is saying that do not touch, no, do not provoke
mm,
the Filipino
mm,
government, the Filipino military, because once they are being attacked, then we can invoke our Mutual Defense Treaty Act and we will
mm,
interfere.
mm,
We will enter into the arena. We will protect the Philippines at all costs.
mm,
No? So I don't know if it's just plain rhetoric, because it's
mm,
too costly for them to enter another third front. No, because U.S. is much involved in Russia, in Ukraine war.
Mm,
Now he's
mm,
much involved in Israel as well. And
mm. And
I
now,
cannot imagine if it will open, another
mm,
front of war between
mm,
U.S. and China, because of just the aggressive act of China. So I think to answer your question, sir, we cannot do so much. No,
mm,
we can only make noise. We can only come out with our letter of asking Chinese government to the
mm.
embassy to explain these acts. And I think we have numerous. We have hundreds even complaints filed against Chinese government, but nothing has been happening so far. So no, but just the same, I think what the government is doing is trying to create interest and trying to persuade other countries to support us, to be behind us, no, even when they say we are behind the Philippines, like what Japan is doing right now. They are offering even their military was this
And Australia,
technology to, yeah,
we also have
Australia, and
Australia and Canada.
yeah, and Canada, they're also supporting us. So we just hope that all of this will be galvanized into such thing that China will have to think twice. Will have
Mm.
to think twice before becoming more aggressive, and they would become more, what's this, it would lead to bloodshed. And we cannot afford that. We cannot really afford that.
Mm. Yes, that's why Philippine government is really on that maximum tolerance on
Yes, sir.
the maximum tolerance on
Yes,
the
sir.
what this Chinese military have done to us, no? And
Yes, we can only
of
make
course,
noise. We can only make noise, but
mhm.
we cannot. That's the only thing we can do. Yes, sir.
And what about this ICC? If we ask from the ICC, and we, in fact we did not join the ICC.
Yeah, I think ICC issue, sir, is much politically motivated, because this is one stick that was this the leftists are doing. They would like to make a leverage, and this is the only way. Although technically they cannot interfere with the judicial system, because what the government is claiming, our judicial system is working. So why
Within.
interfere with what we are doing? No, we prosecute criminals, things like those. So stop interfering with our internal affairs. And well, actually, they can only do so much, because the good, how will I say that? The limitation that ICC has is that because we are no longer part of it. Technically, we are no longer part of it. No, so what the other opposing parties are doing is just you're trying to drag in ICC, because that's one way to control the political ambition of other would be president in the
That's
country
why
someday.
could that be a possibility that Philippines with this bullying of Chinese via Chinese military, maybe Philippines would find could have a hard time dealing with this bullying because we ourselves, we the Philippines itself did not join with the ICC. How can this
I
uh, yeah, maybe another form of telling this International Criminal Court with what these Chinese people have done. Can it be
Okay.
possible?
I think, sir, when you talk about the ICC, it's focused more on the individual rather than on the state. If I'm
Mm,
not mistaken, it's more on the focus on the individual. So when a case is filed, that's about the individual. Like what
mm-hmm,
happened to Russia. There's also a case filed against Russia regarding his actuations against Ukraine. So
mm,
it's against addressed to individual, not against any state. So in
mm.
this case, I don't know. I haven't heard any any complaint filed against the Chinese leadership on this. No, because ICC right now, if you look at if you look around, even if you check on the newspapers, it's focused on the individual, like Duterte and
Mm.
Bato and things like those. So that's
Yeah,
my
yes,
take
yes.
on it, sir.
What I'm
Mm.
implying is that maybe the Philippine government couldn't do that against the leader or any that particular official in that Chinese vessel because
We are
we
not
did
part
not
of it.
join the ICC.
Okay. Yeah.
Possibilities.
I think, yeah, I think that's one good point, sir.
Mm.
Because we are not part of it, though, so we cannot
Yes.
file a
So we
complaint on
cannot.
the ICC.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the disadvantage of not being part
Yes.
of
Yes.
ICC, I think. Yeah,
Mm. Mm.
that's right, sir. You have that
Mm.
point. Mm.
Mm.
So the only option we have is military, and the
Mm.
military could only come from the US. I
Yes.
don't know
Yes.
how long. I don't know
Mm.
if the US will really be involved in it, because what's the demarcation line? Because the Chinese government, the Chinese militias or the Coast Guard has already fired their
Mm. Mm.
yung ano nila, yung water
Water
cannon
cannon.
nila.
Mm.
Oo, so that's already violent, no?
Yes.
Kaya lang wala pa namang nasabing someone
And
died or
it's within
someone
our
was
sovereignty.
within a
If
territory.
within our
Yeah,
territory.
yeah, that's right, sir. Oo. So, many things are happening actually that we really don't understand right now, no? But suffice to say, for as long as everything is at peace, no, even if there are some confrontations that are going on like this one, for me, suffice it's already enough. Uh,
Mm.
for as long as it will not escalate into much
Worse.
worse situation.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Benz, for your short but concise report. No, it's good. So yeah, we've just finished that part. That's lesson three. Is that lesson three? No,
Lesson 3, yes sir,
lesson
yes sir,
three. Yes.
lesson 3. Yeah.
Okay, so
And
thank
I
you for
have
that. Mm.
ilan na lang natira, sir?
4 and 5, yun na lang.
4 5,
Kuha
okay.
na lang siguro 4 and 5. So